Hi everyone, Scott here from NAMC, or the North American MiG Consortium. I wanted to do a walk around on our newly released and available for sale plane on our website, migsorus.com, the new NAMC Mig-35. If you go to that website and go to the sales page, there's already a very detailed background document that discusses in detail the background and development of this plane. So essentially, I'll just run over a few of the quick highlights. Basically, Stefan, my partner in this plane, and I made friends on the RCPowers website about 9 months ago, and we started tinkering primarily with the MiG-29 V3 and V4. And over that time period between us, we probably built about a dozen prototypes and logged about 1,000 test flights. And the culmination of that, with some help from the MiG-29 V4 plans that Dave Powers and Scott Lott were very gracious to allow us to work with, we ended up with the MiG-35. So I encourage you to go read that document. It's far more in-depth than I'm going to be here today. But I thought, if you're a visual learner like me, there's no alternative for, seeing a guy show you the plane kind of hands-on. So I'm just going to primarily go over some of the the main design features that make this such an amazing looking and performing park jet. As Dave Powers was gracious enough to write in his testimonial to this airplane, it's the most precise park jet in the world, and we're very humbled that Dave would say that about this amazing plane. So thanks to him and thanks to Scott Lott for everything they've done for us. Okay, so really quick about the dimensions. The wingspan on this is 27 inches, so the same as the MiG-29, but it's much shorter. It's 2.5 inches shorter, so its scale dimensions, 38.5 inches long, 27-inch wingspan. I'm not exactly sure how tall it is back here, but it is considerably shorter than the MiG-29, all scale dimensions. I must mention now that Stefan is the primary designer behind this plane, and I'm retired, so I have lots of times to go out to the field and bum around and do lots of flying. So we had a really excellent relationship that way. Stefan is a scientist and a surgeon, and very analytical and technical that way. So he was able to do a lot of amazing research. The plans on this plane have been gone over, believe me, pixel by pixel. It's one of the tightest built planes I've ever built, without a doubt, and everything is straight and true. Just an excellent, very easy, straightforward build. So we were kind of like crew chief and race driver, I guess, on a NASCAR team, if we can be bold enough to call ourselves that. And I would go out and fly, come back, write up detailed flight reports, and then Stefan would mull through that and then take out the good points. And so that's kind of how we did it. It was a real team effort, and it was a pleasure working on this project with Stefan. Okay, so those are the basic dimensions. So right from the front here, I'll just go over kind of quickly. You'll notice Stefan redesigned the canopy here, so it's narrower at the front and at the back, so that it tapers very nicely, kind of a real sort of oval or teardrop shaped canopy. And what he did was on the back here, there's the little piece that comes up in the center with a notch and a slot and a tab here. And what he did on the back was put a little canopy base support back here that slides onto that. So when you curve these sides in, the bottom doesn't fold underneath. So you end up with a nice scale-looking canopy rather than something that would look like a mushroom, thinner at the top and wider at the thinner at the bottom and wider at the top. So you're probably not going to be able to see this because of the paint and everything, but right here, let me try and angle this so you can see it. Right here, this is the bulkhead that goes on to the nose former. So when we first was playing around, we were still balancing our planes a bit nose heavy. So when we had to, one of the biggest features is we moved the motor forward about 1.5 inches. So that shortened up this fuselage area here. So we thought, oh well, we're going to need more room up front here to balance it. Well, we had quite an epiphany about 3 months ago when we started employing neutral balance practices and that sort of stuff. So we ended up not needing the extra space, but because it didn't affect the structure, we left it there, and we ended up with the added bonus now. So the bulkhead is right here, and the two tabs for the lurks, when you push those in, go right in up against that tab. So when you're pushing the wing plate and the fuselage together, you don't feel like you're crushing this, and it gives you a little bit more glue area and helps get that lined up. So that worked out really well. All right, so I'll talk right now sort of about the movement, the location of the motor. Like I said before, the motor is moved 1.5 inches further forward than it was on the MiG-29 because, of course, we shortened up the plane quite a bit, and we wanted to get the motor and everything else close to the center of gravity. The center of gravity essentially is right here. It lines up with the very front sort of the rudder servo that's marked out on the plans. This center of gravity is the neutral center of gravity, meaning that if you are balanced on this center of gravity, the plane should not feel nose heavy, not feel tail heavy. It should feel ideally balanced. And Stefan and I have both done some videos on you know, some of the tests you can do at the field: arc test, glide test, and an inverted test to check to see if your plane is still nose heavy or tail heavy. So what that did was we ended up now with the electronics. The electronics bay is kind of a busy spot here, but we've now got a very short polar moment of inertia, meaning that the servos, you can see the servos on the bottom here, they sort of straddle where the CG is on the top. The motor, the battery, speed controller, and receiver, everything here, this distance from the front of the battery to the back of the motor here is only about just under 9 inches, and the total length of the plane is 38.5. This accounts for 60% of the weight of the plane. So you've got 60% of the weight of the plane in about less than 25% of the length. And because it's concentrated so close to the center of gravity, it makes this plane very, very precise and maneuverable in all three axes. So, you know, if you want to change direction quickly, you really want to throw the plane around, do some really intense aerobatics, it just does that amazingly. And because we've got it, you know, done a lot of testing to find the actual neutral CG here, when it's in the air, it just feels so nicely balanced, including when you launch it and when you land it. It just stays so balanced that, you know, the nose doesn't pitch up or pitch down on it. It just stays beautifully balanced. So that's probably one of the biggest changes and design features that support how precise and maneuverable this park jet is. I'm just going to talk briefly about how that impacted a couple things here on the plane. If you look on the bottom here, you're probably not going to be able to see it, but our wing spar runs, because we move this motor mount so much further forward on the wing, this waist area here in the center, let's call it, you know, is not as thick as it used to be. So and the wing spar, the main wing spar, is a 15-inch piece of, we like to use 4mm carbon rod because it's nice and strong, and because you don't have a big long piece of it there, it you know, it doesn't add a whole lot of weight. So we experimented with several different things, and because our wing spar is about here, you can see all of this area of the wing back here was really unsupported, and we found in testing, without this extra piece of carbon tube here, the wing was quite flexible. So I was seeing wing flex, you know, even at a fairly lightweight, 18 to 19 ounces, I was seeing about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch of wing flex, flexing up at the wing tips. So what we discussed at length and then tested was now this is a 12-inch piece of 3mm carbon tube, and if I can get it oriented here properly, so it runs right in underneath here where your aileron servo is, and is locked into, it goes about halfway into where the intake is here. So it's locked in there nice and solid, the one end, and then your Elevon servo is right over top of those two pieces of carbon, your main wing spar and this. So it gives your Elevon servo, which is the most important servo in a park jet, a really good solid foundation from which to operate. So that's really worked out well. And it's probably, without a doubt, one of the strongest wing setups that I've ever used on a park jet. So really happy with how that worked out. So getting back to this waist area, we also found, because we had narrowed that down quite a bit, Stefan designed these custom-made little pieces of foam for the top and the bottom. So underneath here, underneath this bottom plate, right up against the back of the motor mount, there's two little sort of rectangular shaped pieces that also allow you, I'm not sure if you can see it, but also allow you to make this nice curved piece in here. So there's two on the bottom and then two more on the top, which you're probably not going to be able to see, but two more on the top right in here. So what that does is, not only does it give you a lot more gluing surface for your motor mount, but it sandwiches now the wing spar, and this narrower waist area is now essentially three thicknesses of foam. And if you glue that in there with some good 5-minute epoxy or whatever, it just makes for an incredibly solid motor mount and area right here, of course, which is going to take a lot of punishment, not only from the motor, but from flexing of the plane as it flies. So just a great setup there, and again, something we found out through testing. Let me see. Okay, so the ailerons are a little bit different than what a lot of people might be used to, but we experimented over time. We experimented with several different shapes and sizes of ailerons. You can see these are not full-length ailerons. We also have called them more maneuvering flaps. I guess they're probably, not quite a flap, not quite an aileron, but they're in the position where a flap would normally be on an airplane. But what we have found over testing is that it reduced, by not having moving area out here at the wingtip, was it helped reduce any tendency to tip stall quite a bit. These act exceptionally well as flaps, spoilers, spoilerons, flaperons, whatever you want to do. And you'll notice on the plans and in our pictures, and in the instructions, if you look at pictures of the real world MiG-35, you'll see lots of video and pictures of it with a straight wing like this one, or that are also MiG sort of developed at what it looks like a flap that extends straight out to I don't know, maybe to increase the wing area and provide more lift. And so what it looks like is, when you see it flying, is it looks like there's kind of a notched wing now, because part here is extended out. So what Stefan did in the plans is, because we actually I like the straight line and he likes the notch set, so we decided for customers for options depending on what look you like, you can build optionally with either size or either shape, maneuvering flap or aileron, whichever you like to call it. So that's a nice option or feature for you there. Okay, so if you look at it sideways, you can see Stefan did a lot of work laying down engineering, MiG-35 engineering drawings that he found online. So this is a very scale size and looking vertical stabilizer and rudder. The MiG-35 has a very distinctive long sort of ventral fin here that runs out of the front of the vertical stabilizer. So Stefan did an excellent job there of designing that. You'll also notice here we tested probably, I'd venture to guess, half a dozen or 8 different configurations of rudders. We had inboard rudders, we had rudders with more of a counterbalancing part out here on the front. And this by far is the best rudder for how we like to fly. What it does is, because we found through testing and comparing it to angled rudder hinges, is that if you pull up, you want to do like a stall turn or a hammerhead or something like that, is that the vertical hinged rudder and trailing edge, when you crank the rudder over, it should just move in the yaw. It doesn't induce roll. What we found in testing was sometimes that the angled, there was a far greater tendency with the angled rudder hinge when you crank the rudder over, it would also make the plane roll. So we wanted rudders that when we kicked to do something in the yaw, it did only the thing we wanted to do in the yaw, not in other axes. So we found that these are excellent for that. They're excellent for high alpha. You know, they give you plenty of authority for maneuvering in high alpha or in slow flight, depending on how you like to fly your plane. And they're just excellent rudders for this plane. I know they look a little bit oversized when we've sort of downsized everything else, but they're extremely effective. Okay, the Elevons here are scale size to the rest of the plane, and you know, they're distinctive to the Mig-35. The Mig-35 has sort of more of a short, squat Elevon than the Mig-29. It also has this very unique little dog tooth piece out in the front here, so Stefan was able to dial all that into the plans. You know, we kept, because we both think this is an excellent innovation that Dave Powers and Scott Lott started using on the MiG-29 V4 and other V4 planes, is, you know, we have the fixed horizontal stabilizer. We kept that from the MiG, and the you know, the hinged Elevon there. We've also kept, you're probably not going to be able to see it, but we've also kept that sort of 3-degree toe in or kicked out, whichever way you want to look at it, in the horizontal stabilizers to you know, to give you good yaw stability in the turns. This prop slot is the stock prop slot. For those of you who watched any of my other walk around videos, I normally always like to hack a great big hole in the middle here from other people's plans, but we settled on this prop slot. It's a bit bigger maybe than what you're used to, but what we found is that, you know, it gives the prop plenty of room to breathe in there, and to also disperse the prop wash far more easily and smoothly along the back of the plane. And it probably also makes it a little bit quieter maybe. You'll also notice that we've always liked to run our servos and our push rods externally. One of the reasons being is not only is it easier to adjust and to, you know, do maintenance on your servo if you break a servo arm or lose a screw out of it or whatever. But what it also does, and we did the same thing on the rudder, as you've already seen here, and ran the rudder hinge on the outside. What it also does is it keeps the prop slot area clear of any obstructions, and also keeps the area back here where the prop wash is going to be as clean as possible. You know, we were trying to squeeze as much efficiency out of the prop wash as we possibly can, and it's worked out really, really well. Okay, just briefly on the KFs, we kept this forward, you know, full KF forward here on the top along the leading edge root extension, or lurks. We experimented with several different shapes and sizes of KFs. Stefan did exhaustive research online to try and find if there was sort of a magic formula for KF size and shape for swept wing airplanes like the MiG-29, and unfortunately wasn't really able to come up with anything, so we just kind of had to do things the old-fashioned way. So we experimented quite a bit. This, if not including this part forward here, if we draw this, you know, if my finger here is a line, the KF here along the fuselage at the root of the wing is about 41% of the chord, and then it actually tapers down to about 35%. Stefan's ingenious thoughts there were, because the wing is swept back so much, you know, why do we need so much KF out here at the wingtip? So, you know, we had experimented, believe me, we had 43%, we had 40% all the way, we had even thinner out here, I think, and thicker out here at the end. Multiple different types of KFs, and when we first both tried this size KF, it was like a eureka moment. It just seemed to work out just awesome with this plane. The other kind of cool feature is, let me just get something here, the back of the KF, the trailing edge of the KF, where it meets the fuselage here, is directly in line with where the neutral center of gravity ended up being on this plane. So I think that also helps contribute to its maneuverability. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the setup. You know, we do have plans, and Stefan's come up with some awesome instructions, and I just want to give you kind of you know, a few ideas and tips from my experiences of building and flying this plane. So I'm going to show you, these are a few of the batteries that I've tested already with this plane. This is a 2200 3-cell 40C discharge. It's a fairly heavy battery, but it's my favorite sort of for an overall battery, because this is the focal price type 2700 kV motor, or a 2212-6 2700 kV motor. There's several different vendors available where you can buy this motor. If you go to our website, migs-r-us.com, under we've got a parts page there, and we have recommended parts, and I've listed 3 or 4 different vendors where you can purchase this type of motor. Very inexpensive, but it's our favorite motor for real great aerobatic and aerobatic performance, quickness, and speed. So that's a fairly heavy battery. No problem balancing this plane with that. This is another 2200 battery, as I've got in this plane right now. This is about the same weight as what RCPowers would recommend on their master parts list. It's only a 25C battery, and it's a zippy compact, so it's about an ounce lighter than that other battery. So you know, if you want to have a little bit lighter plane, no problem there. And this is actually an 1800 milliamp battery. It's probably, I think it's 50 grams or almost 2 ounces lighter, and still no problem whatsoever balancing it. So what you're going to find when you build this plane is, with all of these size of batteries, if you get it balanced correctly, and what I encourage you to do is, especially the first time you build it, is Stefan has gone to where these servos are located on the plans, where you see the cutouts. They're put there for a reason, so that we concentrate, as I talked about earlier, a polar moment of inertia, we concentrate as much weight as possible close to the center of gravity. Okay. You'll notice here Stefan has also gone to the effort of making on the bottom KFs, of making cutouts, reliefs on them, so that after you mount your servos you can put your bottom KF on there. KF4, if you're looking for really high-end performance and overall aerobatic stability, speed, we highly recommend KF4 for this plane, and then you know, the 6 servo setup. It'll fly just awesome with Elevons only and no KFs. I would actually not recommend KF2s. When I tested it with KF2s in a calm wind, I would, if I was to estimate, I would say 15 to 20% loss of quickness and maneuverability, because the KF2 just took away a lot of its response and precision, because it made it more floaty. And then in the wind, it was a real handful. It was with the KF2. It was like reminded me of a tired, cranky toddler. You know, it wasn't quite throwing a temper tantrum, but it resisted every single thing I tried to get it to do. So if you're not sure about KFs, don't have to put KFs on it. It will fly just fine without KFs, and is a ton of fun. But if you're really looking to ramp up your performance and have the best overall setup, we highly recommend KF4. Okay, so I already talked about where the battery goes. So again, it's going to be a bit of a snug fit, so you just plan things out. I've got my receiver over here on this side, and I've got all my servo wires and wire bundle here. I've got it bunched together and zap strapped together to make that nice and compact. I'm just going to take the speed controller out of there. Hopefully you can also see, I don't have it quite aligned, but also the one thing about when you neutrally balance a plane, you know, you can't be scared of a little bit of trim. My philosophy for far too long was I needed to, I always wanted to balance the plane on the stock CG with 0 trim. So what ended up happening lots of times is I was probably flying nose heavy, and my polar moment of inertia ended up being quite a bit bigger. When I started going to this neutral setup on my MiG-29, I was able to move my battery about 2 inches further back. The other thing is by having the battery straddling the center line of the electronics bay or of the plane, it makes it much better balanced flying, especially if you get down, you know, if you're getting down, you're doing some slow speed or in high alpha. So don't be scared of putting some trim in. Now, if you've got a situation where you've got to have like all of your right aileron trim in there to keep it flying straight, then you know you might want to go and check all your control surfaces, make sure that they're fully aligned, and then play around with it from there. So you probably see here what I've done in my builds is I've put this piece of Velcro along the side here because this is where I normally put my speed controller. That helps to alleviate a little bit of torque roll. And I've actually started laying it sort of more on its side. So I put Velcro on the side of this speed controller and then laid it on its side so that it brings more of the weight of the speed controller towards the center of the plane as well, but still gives you a little bit of counterbalance weight for torque roll. So the reason that I put this here is, depending again on what weight of the battery, with the bigger battery all the way back, the plane might just be on the edge of feeling a little bit nose heavy. So that way, when I put the big battery in, I can slide my speed controller all the way to the back, and then still be able to achieve as close, achieve the neutral balance without having to put a whole bunch of trim in. And then, as the lighter the battery, you don't necessarily have so much problem with a big battery being further forward. So, I would encourage you to, again, because the battery, 99% of the time, the battery's going to be all the way back up against the motor mount. Put your receiver and everything else back here as well as you can, depending on how big your receiver and stuff is. And then have this piece of Velcro in here, because then that allows you to use your speed controller and just move your speed controller back and forth to to really fine tune. The other thing is, because everything's kind of tight, what I like to do is, if I land it, I finish flying, is I just take the speed controller out like that, pull my battery out, and then when I put a new battery back in, and then just boom, in with the speed controller like that, and away you go. So just a little bit of a tip there. I think everything else is covered in the background document and the instruction, folks. I just wanted to point that out. The last thing I'm going to do is, if you just be patient with me here for 1 sec, is I'm just going to show you, because this plane is so incredibly agile and changes direction so quickly in all 3 axes, you really don't need a lot of throws, we've come to find. Stefan and I are both, for about the last 2 months, we've been reading and studying a book called Airplane and Radio Setup Manual, written by Dave Scott, who's the chief instructor at the first US RC Flight School. It's an amazing publication if you're looking for tips and ways to set up your planes, set up your transmitter, and set up yourself to do more precision flying. I would highly recommend that you get a copy. It's been just a complete turn of events for us, and has really allowed me to push my skills in a whole different and better direction. So I'm just going to plug the battery in here so I can show you what kind of throws I have. All right, so these might seem like pretty small throws to some guys, but I'll tell you, if you just want to fly around scale, you don't need any more throw than this. So I've only got, in the elevator here, I've got basically 1.5 inches up and down, so 3 inches total in the travel. That will move this plane around in the pitch, as quick as you please, especially if you're wanting to fly more scale. With the precision setup that we are using, what we've done is we've dropped the throws down. We're no longer using the sort of 3D throws with huge throws and tons of expo. That was another habit that I had gotten into for flying. So what I was able to do is, now I've reduced these throws, but my expo now is only about 15%. So I use very nice, easy movements around the center to make this plane move. And because it's been designed to have the CG and the polar moment of inertia so nice and tight together, it requires very little control input to respond. So I like to fly with ailerons activated all the time. Stefan has his ailerons on a switch, selectable, and during different phases of flight he will actually shut those off. I only have about a ½ inch of travel on my ailerons, very little. This thing rolls, you know, amazingly well. Scale performance rolls there, and you know, if I want it to roll a little bit more, I can adjust one or the other, the roll input on either one of these surfaces if I want it to roll a little bit. But I've got it set up exactly the way that I want. For high alpha, the spoilers, actually my spoilerons only come up about 3/8 of an inch. I really don't need a whole lot of spoileron, I find, to keep it the nose up and steady in good scale high alpha. The rudders, very little movement there. You know, I only have about I think about 3/4 of an inch, total of 1.5 inches, and that's plenty. You know, like I said, if you want to pull up and then crank the nose over and you know, do kind of a hammerhead or stall turn, plenty of authority, and also plenty of authority there for high alpha. You know, to get the nose around. It's very responsive in high alpha. So anyway, those are the throws, and you know, I would strongly encourage you to experiment with that. You'll also probably notice here that I've gone to a more precision setup with my servos. My push rod is as close to the servo as I can possibly get it. So when I move the stick, you know, the servo, it doesn't have to work as hard because I don't have this big long lever. Now I have a really short lever. And what I find is by the time the movement transmits from the servo, or transfers from the servo to the control surface, the movement on the control surface is much more smooth, whereas when I used to have it way out at the end of the servo arm, it was far more jerky. Anyway, that's more generic RC type stuff, but not so much about the MiG-35. But anyway, all right. So I appreciate you watching. I hope that, you know, if this is giving you some incentive and excitement about trying out this new plane. As I said before, it has excellent slow flight characteristics. It glides beautifully. It does, you know, it will do good scale high alpha, you know, 40 degrees AOA. But where this plane really earns its pay is in that sort of 50 to 75% throttle range. And if you just really want to get out there and have a plane that handles like a precision high performance sports car, then we strongly believe this is the plane for you. It will just flat out carve up the skies. You know, I've been flying park jets for over 2 years now, and I certainly wouldn't call myself an advanced pilot. I'm maybe sort of more high-end intermediate, and there is no way that I would ever be able to outperform this plane with my skills. The plane would always you know, take everything I can get and still be capable of far more. So for you guys that really want to have something that's quick and agile and aerobatic, we strongly recommend this plane for you. You know, like I said before, KF4s, the full controls, put a nice little peppy motor on it, like this 2212-6 2700 kV motor, and you'll have a ton of fun. I also have a second one built that I put the NTM Prop Drive 2700 in it, and it is flat out scary fast. Over 100 miles an hour easily on 4-cell, and not a single problem. The faster it goes, the more stable it gets. So you can really light up your field with this plane. So again, migsurus.com is the name of our new website. Plane is available there for sale. Build instructions are there. Background, you know, background document for on the background and development of this plane. So if you want more information than what I've given you here, please, I strongly encourage you to go read that. It'll give you a really detailed background on the development and evolution of this plane. So in closing, I'm hoping that you'll go check it out, and we hope to see plenty of folks building this plane and seeing lots of pictures and video of it flying very soon. Again, a big shout out and thanks to Dave Powers and Scott Lott from RCPowers. Without your openness and supportiveness to the modifications that we started doing on your plane and your advice along the way, this plane would not exist. So we owe RCPowers, Dave Powers and Scott Lott, my apologies, a huge debt of gratitude and thanks. So again, migsrust.com, check it out and get yourself a NAMC Mig-35. I don't think you'll regret it. It's just one seriously fun and precise park jet, the most precise park jet in the world. Thanks for watching.